Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Usagi Podjimbo podcast. I'm your host, Mike, and oh boy, do I got a story for you guys today. We are ending our Gin story with chapter 3, which is called Lady Asano's Revenge. Yeah, we got a good one for you. Finally, we're done with the Gin story. Short, sweet, not overstaying its welcome. But if you're new, this is the podcast all about Usagi Yojimbo, me going through issue by issue of the comic, talking about it, giving my thoughts and opinions about it. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. If you want to help out the podcast, share the podcast, listen to the podcast, obviously, and tell your friends. That's the best way to help this little podcast grow. Make sure to go to Spotify, leave a comment or review, and go to Apple Podcast and leave a review. If you leave a good review or a bad review, whatever it is, I'll read it on the podcast. If you'd like to give feedback, you can do so as well. You can find me at the Usagi Podjimbo Facebook page. I had a brain fart there. But you can find me there, growing the little podcast group. But yeah, let's get started in this particular issue. If you don't remember, Gin and Usagi, as well as Lady Asano, were captured by Oda's men. Oda is the magistrate. He basically betrayed Lady Asano's clan, and she's been after him for the past 20 years, it seems like, and is wanting her revenge. And Gin gets wrapped up into this because his dad was the retainer for Lady Asano's family. His name was General Murakami. He was a very famous general. And our story starts out with Gin with a bunch of Tokage all over him, just like how we started this particular story arc. He has all the Tokage on him, and he's like, well, are you happy now? He's talking to Usagi. He's like, this is another mess you got me into. You and your constant meddling. Oh, I hate you, Usagi. You're always getting me into stuff and whatnot. Usagi comes back at him. Can't you quiet down? I've got enough on my mind as it is. And Gen keeps complaining about these stupid lizards that are all over him. And he's like, the magistrate, Oda, he's going to execute us as accomplices because Lady Asano tried to kill him. And for good reason, I have a good reason to whine, basically, is what Gen says. Usagi's like, okay, we've got to get free as they're tied up, they're bound. They have ropes around their body. And Usagi complains that, their weapons are gone. And, again, makes a crack at Usagi, saying, oh, we could bite our way out of this if you had bigger teeth, stop talking my ear off, Gin says. And Usagi's like, well, you got a better idea again? And he's like, yeah, actually, I do. Get these vermin off me first. And Usagi, like I said, Usagi talked about how they lost their weapons. And Gen's like, well, they didn't actually take all of our weapons. And Usagi is like surprised. And he's like, oh, your ceramic horn. And Gen's like, yeah, break it off. He's like, and Usagi's like, what? What are you talking about? Break it off. And Gen's like, you heard me, break it off. And so we see Usagi basically kick Gen in the face, breaking the ceramic horn, and we see a blade hidden on the inside. Remember, Gen had the ceramic horn made in sort of homage or to pay respect to Zatuino, kind of, if I remember correctly, because Zatuino has a fake nose, and Gen has a fake horn because Zatu cut off Gen's horn during the battle at the Dragon Bellow conspiracy. And he's like, yeah, it cost me a lot. I had to have a potter make it and stuff. several times he has talked about his new horn that made him look all good and spiffy. I think it's funny that Gen's like, "Oh, you could have warned me, uh, or you could have, warned me about kicking me in the face. It's gonna be hurting me for weeks now." And Usagi goes to grab the blade. He's like, "Oh, stop your whining and turn around so we can cut these bonds off of us." And they get out and they check their arms, because I guess the bonds were tied too tight. And we see Usagi is much better. Let's get out of here now. And so Usagi breaks the lock with the knife that Gin had, and we see this prison guard, and he's like, "Blah, because of the a few prisoners, we've got to do extra duty." He's like, "I'd like to teach them a thing or two to ruin my evening. I hate prison duty. It's so bad." As he's walking around the corner, he sees Usagi. He's like, "Hey, what's going on here? As a prison escape." And Usagi has this cool move where he throws the knife, and the knife actually lands in the guard's neck. He kills the guard, rescues Lady Asano, and Gin says, "Hey, leave her here. She'll slow us down." And Usagi's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Damn it. I guess I don't mean that, Gin says, life would be so much easier if I did, which is funny. But they end up breaking the other lock that with the cell that held Lady Asano in it. After that, Gin asks Usagi, "Do you know where our swords are being held?" And Usagi says, "Mine are being held in the dungeon storage room. I have no idea where yours are." And Usagi sneaks up on this one guard, knocking him out. And they end up going into the storage area. Usagi finds his swords. Gin doesn't find his swords. He finds a different set of swords. He's like, but my swords aren't here, And he's like, "Well, I could get attached to these, These are pretty nice. Nicer than yours, I think, Usagi," he says. And we see them, they're like, "Okay, we got to sneak out of here." We see Lady Asano. She goes and she's thinking about something. She's contemplating something. Uh, we don't know what yet, but Usagi says, "Hurry, Lady Asano." We see she has a smaller sword behind her. She has it hidden. She took a sword. And we get this funny scene of these two guards. They're talking, "I hope somebody comes over to relieve us soon." And they're kind of bantering back and forth and whatnot, asking, "Oh, do you think these people actually were going to kill the magistrate?" And they're like, "I don't know if they were going to kill the magistrate or not and whatnot." And we get this funny scene. One of them picks up something off the ground. I don't know what it is. It looks like a turd. I want to say it's a turd, but I don't know. And he kind of smells it, and he's like, "Oh, this thing stinks." He kind of throws it away, and we see behind them, the door opens. You see these two eyes in the darkness, and we see Gin and Usagi run out and just murder these guys. He takes them out so fast, and they're like, "We got to get out of here. Let's go." Lady Asano is gone, and we see Gin and Usagi looking at Lady Asano running away. And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, forgive me, but I've waited too long to get my revenge." And as Usagi and Gin are chasing after her, they get get bump up against these other guys who are showing up, these other guards, and they kind of cross paths, and they take him out with ease. And Usagi says, "There's more guards coming. I'll take care of them. And you go after Lady Asano." So Gin goes after her, and he says to himself, "I'll drag her back by the hair if I have to. The city guards will be here soon." And he goes after her. He's like, "Oh, where did she go?" He kind of lost her. And he goes to the door. I love this, just one panel of Gin, and he slams the door open with both of his hands. He has a serious look on his face. He has a sword in his hand and whatnot. And he says, "Lady Asano," she's like, "Oh, General Murakami, Like Oda says, "Oh, that's impossible. Murakami is that's not General Murakami." And she's like, "Oh, General, you've come to save me." Oda is determined that this is not Murakami, and Oda actually slices and swings at Lady Asano, cutting her, which Gin is very taken back by this and goes into a fit of rage, attacking everybody. We see Lady Asano on the ground, and we see Oda, and he says, "There's only one of him. He has no challenge against all of us. Overwhelm him." And we see Lady Asano kind of waning, trying to get up. And he's like, more guards, more guards. Keep away from me." And we see Lady Asano reach for the blade that she ended up going after or taking from when Usagi and Gin were getting their swords. Oda's very happy. He's like, you've got him now. We've got him. And we see where is it? Oops, I lost my spot. There it is. Oh yeah. He's like, kill him. You know, I'll do it myself if I have to. And we see Lady Asano creep up behind Oda, bringing up her sword, coming down and stabbing him in the leg. Everybody's so surprised, and Gin's still fighting. And we see Lady Asano on the ground. She's obviously wounded. She's like, "Oda, he's like, "Oh, and you stabbed me in the leg, you'll suffer for that." And we see Gin still fighting. Lady Asano gets up, and we see her walking slowly towards Oda. Oda is trembling in fear, coward. He's being a coward, and he's like, "Keep away! What are you doing? Stay away from me!" And we see Lady Asano stumbling. So after him, he's like, "You destroyed my clan, you traitor. I waited 20 years to get my revenge. I know I'm dying, but I'll kill you before I breathe my last breath." And he's like, "Get away from me! Get away from me!" He's a scaredy cat, literally, because Oda's a cat. And you see Oda. She says, "He's like, stay back, stay back, and you can't escape." Lady Asano says, "You are a coward now, Oda. You can't run anymore." We see Gin still fighting as Oda calls for his guards. Lady Asano, she attacks Oda. She's like, "This ends now." And we hear a no. And he's like, after Gin is finishing the last of them, he goes after Lady Asano. He sees Lady Asano is on top of Oda. And one thing I did notice is I don't remember if this is like prevalent, or maybe it's prevalent with like bigger characters, the death's head that represents death in the Usagi universe. So this one has like a top knot on it, which is Oda's hairstyle. And then the next one, we find out that Lady Asano is dead, obviously, from her wounds. Lady Asano ends up getting one with like her hairstyle on it as well, which I thought was a funny little nice touch. Even like Oda's head and face looks like the death's head, which I never really picked on up before. I don't know if that's happened before. Can't remember exactly. Let me know. Comment on it and let me know if that's happened before. This is the new thing, because I can't remember, or maybe I just didn't notice. Lady Asano ends up dying. Gin brings her out, and we see Usagi and Gin talking about how the guards are coming. We have to leave and whatnot. So they leave, and they go and bury Lady Asano, and I'm guessing like a field of some kind, or like on like a hill. And Usagi asks Gin, "Do you think her spirit is at rest?" And Gin says, "I hope so. She was a wanderer all her life. Her torment has finally ended." Gin says, and Usagi or Gin says, "Revenge is a strong emotion, Usagi. It kept her going for 20 years." And Usagi says, "Honor, so is honor, Gin. It sustained your father for as long, And Gin's like, "Bah, the wind's picking up. Let's get back to the end." Usagi happens to mention that he's like, "Oh, Gin, I'm sorry you lost your swords." And he's like, "Oh, it's all right. I picked up these ones. These ones have a really nice edge to them." And Gin gets a surprised look on his face. And Usagi says, "What's the matter?" to Gin. And he's like, "Looks like somebody stepped on your grave." And Gin, like with a shocked look, like almost like he's seen a ghost, he says, "I never had the time to really a chance to examine these blades. I know them. These swords belong to my father." He's like, "What? How are you certain?" He's like, "Usagi, I was around these swords for 18 years. I think I know my father's swords. And these swords were passed down from his grandfather or his dad's dad to, eventually to Murakami." And he's like, "There was only one way that Oda would have gotten these blades is if he basically pried them out of Murakami's dead hands, So Gin kind of like realizes that his dad is gone, his dad is dead. And, he tells Usagi, "Why don't you go back to the inn? I'll be there in a little bit." And Usagi leaves, and we get this really quiet, touching scene where Gin finally cries again and sheds a tear because remember, he only shed a tear when his mom died. And then we get the scene where they go back to the inn. Usagi is treating Gin's wounds, and we see the guy from before, the innkeeper, who basically berated them for helping out the lady Asano and her helper and whatnot, saying, there's a band who killed the magistrate and wiped out his personal guards. They must have been one big bad gang, and whatnot. And they talk about how they found apparently Lady Asano was captured and she escaped and she was responsible for it apparently. And he starts talking about oh, you should have never fed them and helped them out because they were bad people. And Gen's like, "Hi, you're telling me?" Yeah, and we see the guy. He's like, "Oh, now you got enjoy your meal, and you got a package from the magistrate's office." And we see Gin. He's like, "Oh yeah, my reward money's finally showed up." And he's like, "You mean our reward money?" Usagi says, "All the expenses that I had to help you with." And one night he's like, "Oh sure, the meal, give me the receipts." And Usagi's like, "Receipts? You want receipts? They took everything from me when I went to jail. What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, I guess you don't get any of this money, because I don't have any receipts." And we get this funny scene where Usagi is like, raising up his shirt, getting ready to pummel Jin in the head or get in the head. And, he's like, I'll teach you to, get one over on me, basically. And that's how this particular issue ends. I say this before, and I'll say it again. People are probably tired of hearing me talk about it, But this story arc was a lot of fun. I love seeing Gin's perspective on the whole situation and whatnot. This particular issue was a lot of fun, heartbreaking at times, I would say, but getting a lot of like different aspects to Gin and seeing Gin as a character, other than basically the money grubbing bounty hunter. There's so many layers to Gin, and getting to see different sides of him is really cool. And I just love Gin as a character. Seeing Lady Asano finally get her revenge, bittersweet, I would say a little bit, because she doesn't get to live on her life and whatnot. She like just sacrifices herself for the greater good of the society, I guess you could say. And she basically ruins her name as well when going after Oda and whatnot. But I mean, Oda was a bad guy, he was a bad guy. But yeah, this issue was good. I love that Gin got center stage in this story arc. I mean, Usagi is a great character, but Usagi doesn't have all the flaws that Gin has, which I feel like makes Gin kind of a better character. Usagi very much is a good guy. Occasionally, he does have his flaws and whatnot, but he's very much a good guy. He doesn't walk that like gray area. He's not like the chaotic neutral that Gin is, I would say. Um, but yeah, this is fun. And I really recommend checking out this story if you want to get more about Gin and learn more about Gin. I said it before. If they made a Gin side story or like a spinoff, I would totally read it. And I love his stories. We're moving on to the next two stories. We have two more episodes after this to finish the first Fantagraphics run on Usagi Yojimbo and whatnot. So yeah, I have that to look forward to, and we'll officially wrap up season 1 of Usagi Podjimbo. Uh, I guess, except for like the couple issues or the short stories that I'd never covered because I didn't cover them at the moment for the Albedo Fantagraphics run and whatnot. Eventually, I'll get to them. I feel like whenever. But I really want to get into the Saga series for Usagi Yojimbo, and talk more about that and how Usagi and everybody grows and everything like that. Because the Saga series is amazing. I would say it's people say it's better than the Fantagraphics run. I love the Fantagraphics run. But yeah, it's going to be cool because we're going to get a big Turtles crossover in that, But yeah, I definitely recommend this issue. And we're moving on to the return of Kitsune. And then after that, we'll have a very special issue after that with the last story of Zatuino, I believe it is, I won't get to that. But yeah, this is a lot of fun issue. Very action heavy in this issue, I would say. Very action heavy. I loved it. It was so good. And we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Go check out my other podcast, Otakuology, where if you want to hear me talk about anime and manga, it's a fun podcast to check out. Go check it out. It's on all major podcast platforms. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed, and stay safe out there and go read some Usagi Yojimbo.